Another stat card has been put together. So both 290 and 291 are the most stacked cards of the year, and 292 is also going to follow that. So 3 huge pay-per-view cards in a row, and this one was put together recently. You start off with the return of Chris Weidman. After a 3-year layoff due to that leg injury, he's going to be going up against Brad Tavares, which should be a pretty difficult fight for him. This is not a fastball, but it's not going to be an easy fight either. They're making sure to see if Chris Weidman can still compete somewhat with the top 15. Tavares is not technically top 15, but he's right outside of it. If Weidman could beat him, it shows that he is pretty much top 15 caliber. They're both well-rounded fighters, but on paper with styles and skills, Chris Weidman should be above Tavares in nearly everything. Tavares has some striking skills that can give Weidman problems, but the wrestling from Weidman, as well as his ability to mix up the game, combined with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skill, is way above what Tavares is capable of. With a leg injury, it throws all of that into question. Can Weidman even go that route confidently against someone like Tavares, who's been competing pretty actively? On paper, I do like Chris Weidman's chances against Brad Tavares. I see him throwing out the jabs from long range, using his reach as an advantage, throwing out some good leg kicks, and timing Tavares' aggression with the double leg to take the fight to the ground and dominating on top. I think if Tavares gets taken to the ground, he's going to get dominated. So I am going to go with Chris Weidman. The whole leg injury does make things a lot more questionable, but I do think he should win this, and I'm going to say by a decision win. If he finishes Tavares, that's going to be so exciting, man. Especially over there in Boston, they're going to go crazy for the guy. Then you have Cody Garbrandt versus Mario Bautista. Cody's coming off 1 win, and he's going up against a streaking 4-fight win streak, Mario Bautista, who's a dangerous submission artist, even submitted Benito Lopez with a reverse triangle choke, and his last 3 wins have been finished in the very first round. So unlike some of Cody's recent opponents where most of them were striking with him, Mario Bautista's going to want to, of course, strike a bit, but also try to get the fight to the ground. He throws some crazy stuff out there sometimes, and if he could chin Cody, that could be it for him. I can see Cody Garbrandt's takedown defense being a bit too much for Mario Bautista. Mario Bautista, even though he has good submissions, he doesn't have the greatest way to get the fight to the ground, especially against someone who is so mobile, so elusive with his footwork, so quick on the trigger. It just has clear-cut, good takedown defense. But if Cody gets dropped, that's the way that Mario gets the fight to the ground, because Cody just doesn't have the best head movement these days. He's kind of right there to be hit. Mario Bautista will throw some big overhand or even a flying knee, something crazy like that to catch Cody. On paper, I like Cody's chances. I think he's more skilled overall, but Mario Bautista's on a bit of a momentum here. If Bautista does get Cody to the ground, this fight's most likely over. Cody doesn't have the greatest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skill to thwart with someone like Bautista. Bautista's crazy good on the ground, and I think he would be able to out-scramble Cody Garbrandt, but it's just going to be difficult for him to get the fight to the ground. If he just double legs him and takes him down, I mean, this fight could be over very quickly. With the craziness that he'll throw on the feet and Cody's ability to just always take a shot clean to the face, I can see Bautista dropping him as well. Kind of similar how he dropped Miles John with the flying knee, so I am slightly going to go with Mario Bautista on this one as an early prediction, and I'm going to go by a second round submission. Definitely a very difficult fight for Cody Garbrandt in that bantamweight division. Then we have Geoff Neal versus Ian Garry. So Ian Garry's coming off a 1 good win against a top 15 fighter, but you do have to ask yourself, was Daniel Rodriguez really top 15? Did he really deserve that win over Li Jingliang? That's the only reason why he even was in the top 15. And Ian Garry finished him in the first round, showed a great performance, great striking proficiency, and he's going to have to bring that to another level here when he's going up against Geoff Neal, who's come off a loss to Shavkat Rakhmonov. He did stun Rakhmonov and look good here and there in the fight, but Geoff Neal definitely has to make way for this one, as he's supposed to be a huge test for Ian Garry. He's not supposed to allow this young guy up into the top 7 that quickly. Geoff Neal's pressure is going to be his main weapon in this fight. He cannot allow Ian Garry to have space to work with. Ian Garry does his best work when the fight's in the center, or he's pressuring you, and he's putting together combinations from long range. If Geoff Neal can pressure off of his jab and try to line up the left hand to constantly keep that pressure on him, I think all he's going to have to watch out for is Ian Garry's right cross, because Ian Garry would just try to counter you with the right straight, potentially some right uppercuts. He becomes a lot more one-dimensional on the back foot like that. But Geoff Neal sometimes has a bad habit of just trying to keep the fight in the center and not put too much pressure on his opponent, and that's where I can see some of those head kicks getting to Geoff Neal. Ian Garry has good head kicks after his punches. It can really confuse Geoff Neal in the open space, but overall, I think off of the pressure and the very quick left hands that Geoff Neal has, I think he should be able to catch Ian Garry, who doesn't have good head movement. That's why Geoff Neal has to keep the pressure, because Ian Garry's head is there to be hit. He just has to act on it, right? He has to expose that. It's almost like an extension from the Shavkat fight. Geoff Neal just kind of has to place his shots there and pressure him. And the only difference is he's not going to be worried about getting taken to the ground by someone like Shavkat or get countered the way Shavkat can counter you. So I'm ultimately going to go with Geoff Neal, and I'm going to go by a first or second round TKO. The fight could change depending on how Geoff Neal approaches it. Now, the bantamweight division is the highlight of the card, and the next bantamweight fight is going to be Yadong versus Rob Font. Now, with the top guys in this weight class, you could have mixed and matched these guys any which way, right? And we were wondering who Song Yadong was going to fight, and the fact that he's getting Rob Font is exactly what we were thinking that was going to happen. Song Yadong is like in the top 8, Rob Font's in the top 5. This makes perfect sense to try to use Rob Font as somewhat of a stepping stone for Song Yadong, but it's not going to be that easy. Rob Font has excellent boxing. His jab is always going to be his big thing. He's good on the ground and all of that, but you do have to question his ability to handle the explosiveness and the speed of Song Yadong, as Rob Font is getting older. Song Yadong explodes out there so quickly. The only issue he's going to have is getting by the jab and just overall the reach of Rob Font. Song Yadong does have good head movement when he does explode though. He knows how to get in on an opponent's jab just like he did against Marlon Moraes. Marlon Moraes is a bit shorter though than Rob Font, so it's going to be more difficult to do against Font, who also has a very precise jab compared to Marlon Moraes, but the ability has been shown to be there for Song Yadong, and he did show his ability to get in on someone like Corey Sandhagen, who is overall a very tricky fighter, even longer than Rob Font is. But there's a glaring opening for Song Yadong. Leg kicks. Font likes to take a fight like a boxer, and his front leg could be very heavy sometimes. That's an invitation for leg kicks, and look at the size of Song Yadong's legs. Those are going to be taking its toll if he keeps hammering that home, and that makes it even easier for Song to get in on him, exploring with a left hook or a right straight and unloading with a combination on the inside before Font tries to get away. And not only that, Song also has good takedowns. All of the explosions from the outside are something that could bypass the jab if he times it correctly, but he's going to get peppered by them early. I think Song is going to get used to them, adapt, and find success at the end of the first, second, and third rounds, and that's why I ultimately have to go with Song Yadong in the fight, winning this by a decision. I think Rob Font is a bit too tough to get finished. The next bantamweight fight was just put together yesterday. Henry Cejudo is going to be fighting Chito Vera, and as I read those names, I am also confused just like you are. How did Chito, who's coming off a loss to Corey Sandhagen, getting a higher ranked opponent than Sandhagen is getting? Sandhagen is getting the number 11 Umar Nurmagomedov, whereas Chito is getting the number 3 Henry Cejudo. And I thought it was going to be the reverse. I thought Chito was going to get Umar, also knowing that Chito is older than Corey, so it would be a better way to use that younger guy Umar to get above the older Chito. And I thought that Corey was going to get Cejudo as a number 1 contender fight. But the fact that they put this together, they put Cejudo versus Chito and Corey versus Umar, now it's kind of hard to know who's going to get a title shot. It would have to be Corey if he beats Umar, but what if Umar beats Corey and Cejudo beats Chito? Now what do you do? Or even if Chito beats Cejudo? It's so confusing at that point. If we had Chito versus Umar and Cejudo versus Corey, now it's pretty much dead set on who gets the next title shot. It's the winner of Cejudo and Corey. I'm not going to complain though, these are some really good fights, going to be really exciting. It's just a bit confusing. Now the thing that's going to make a difference in this one is, will Chito adjust from what he did against Corey Sandhagen? He cannot start slow against Henry Cejudo because Cejudo's going to put a wrestling clinic on him. Chito doesn't have the greatest takedown defense. Even Corey was taking him to the ground. If Corey's taking you to the ground, which was his last fight, Cejudo's going to absolutely dominate him with his wrestling. And that's pretty much going to be the story of the fight. If Chito does not get going early and does not find a head kick or a flying knee to intercept the movement or the takedowns, he's going to be on his back the whole fight. It's just that moment at the beginning of the rounds where he's going to have to find that knockout opening. And he is one of the only guys that Cejudo has fought that will throw something like that at him. But yeah, I have to go with Henry Cejudo. I can't trust at this age that Chito completely changes as a fighter. The guy's one of the older guys in the top 10. And Cejudo has probably the worst style for Marlon Vera outside of Marab. So I'm going to go with Henry Cejudo, and I'm going to go by a decision win. And then the co-main event is the first championship fight, Zhang Weili versus Amanda Lemos. This is an excellent one. Lemos is a bit old in age. She's like 36 years old, but is the only other fighter in the weight class that has a clear power advantage over the champion. Zhang Weili is known for her power. She's known as someone not to exchange with, but she's finally fighting someone who she probably doesn't want to exchange with. Amanda Lemos has some absurd power for a strawweight. It was always known that Zhang Weili and Rose had the most power in the division, but as Lemos has been performing as of late, she's showing that okay, she has a different kind of power compared to everybody else. She's in a tier of her own when it comes to just straight up knockout ability. And that's going to make this fight very dangerous for Weili and also exciting for the fans, because we know that Weili loves to trade with her opponents. And that's why this fight could be pretty difficult to predict. I think Zhang Weili's chances of winning this are not going to be in her hands. I think it's going to be in her wrestling. She needs to get Amanda Lemos to the ground, control on top, and just make it less dangerous, make it less risky. Don't throw too many leg kicks, especially if you're not going to set them up, because Lemos will punch right over those and knock you out. I think Zhang Weili's going to have to feint a lot, throw some jabs in there, and transition those into takedowns immediately in the fight. She has an opportunity to also beat Lemos in the trading, but it's just way too risky to do it. So I ultimately do think that Zhang Weili has to go out there and just wrestle, because Angela Hill and Michelle Waterson took Amanda Lemos to the ground. And I believe Michelle Waterson did it with a hip toss. If they're going to take her to the ground, I am pretty sure Zhang Weili can as well. So I'm going to go with Zhang Weili in this one. I'm going to go by a decision win. And then for the main event, Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley. This is the fight we knew that was going to happen. It's an effort to make Sean O'Malley one of the biggest names in the UFC. If he could beat Aljamain Sterling, especially in fantastic fashion, I mean, this guy's going to skyrocket into stardom. But on paper, it should be a difficult fight for Sean O'Malley. Throughout Sean O'Malley's entire career, he didn't show that much takedown defense until his last fight. Petr Yan is not a guy that's known to be going for takedowns all the time, but he does have good wrestling, and he took Sean O'Malley down like 6 times in their fight, and it was a 3-rounder. Again, a fight that Petr Yan probably should have won. And if Yan is taking him to the ground that many times, imagine what Aljamain Sterling is going to do. Aljamain Sterling's wrestling style is going to be pretty difficult for Sean O'Malley, but with the striking, O'Malley may be the most dangerous guy Aljamain has ever fought, because Sean O'Malley's the guy that has the ability to outrange Aljamain Sterling. He can punch him from a farther distance, snipe him with the right hand, and look for something big on the outside that really nobody else was able to do. People could point to Corey Sandhagen, but Sandhagen didn't fight that way. Right? Sandhagen doesn't usually fight sniping you from the outside like that, unless it's with his kicks. You probably don't want to do that too much with your kicks, because Aljamain will catch those and take you to the ground. You got to use your hands, and O'Malley does that better than anybody else. So for the first time, it's going to force Aljamain to try to get on the inside and use his wrestling like that, because he doesn't want to shoot from too far, he doesn't want to make it too obvious and get knee to the face. So faking takedowns and using those feints to pressure with the jabs, and then shoot the real takedown when he gets closer to Sean O'Malley and backs him up to the cage, that's going to be Aljamain's way to get the fight to the ground and dominate on top. A lot has been talked about O'Malley's abilities off of his back, but that's only really been shown in his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu matches. And he's never went up against someone like Aljamain Sterling, so I think Sterling gets the fight to the ground, gets his back, and chokes him out. There is always a chance that O'Malley snipes him even early in the fight and knocks him out. That's why the fight is actually more exciting than some of the other contenders. But I am going to go with Aljamain Sterling. I'm going to go by a first-round submission. So crazy good card, very well put together, some great fights throughout the whole thing, a lot of skillful ones. These are very technical fights throughout the whole card, and it's going to be great for a fan who's more into the technical side of the sport. You absolutely don't want to miss this card at all. And leave in the comments below, what are your guys' impressions on the card? How do you rank it with the 2 July cards? Do you put 290 and 291 above it? Or do you think this one is actually better than those? July and August are great months for fights, so make sure to give this a like, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which is either going to be the prediction video or the podcast. Both are going to come out this week.